Hey guys, Pastor Jenny here.
Hi, it's me doing a video because my wife makes me.
I make him, yes. And we're going to continue today our series of Marriage Over.
Okay.
And today we're going to talk about racism. And he was asking me, so what are we going to say? I'm like, no, let's just not even rehearse it. So this is John and Jenny Uncensored.
And you may not believe this, but it's a total coincidence that I'm wearing a black shirt and white shorts. I had no idea I was wearing that.
Wow,
not
so
planned.
black and white.
It's not planned at all. It just happened,
Okay.
for now. So.
And it is a total coincidence that I'm wearing an orange
Yeah,
pinkish
that's very relevant.
dress. That it has absolutely no relevance.
Actually, it does.
whatsoever.
Actually, it does. When our daughter was little,
Uh-huh.
she would tell everybody, my mommy's brown, my daddy's white, and I'm beige.
Yeah, that's
what
true.
she used to say. That's kind of beige.
In a way,
In
kind of like a very,
Yeah, in a way. Okay.
So let's talk about being an interracial couple
Mm-hmm.
and racism in America, because we live in the United States. And I'm going to preface this for those of you that didn't see part one. You might want to go now to see part one, and you might want to subscribe because we're going to be putting our whole story out there. And what we're hoping eventually is to offer helpful tips to couples, whether they're interracial or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because being married is hard work, right?
Yeah.
Heavy lifting.
It's kind of like war with armistice in between.
Now what?
You don't know what armistice is?
Okay,
It's like
translate.
ceasefire.
Okay.
Ceasefire.
Yes,
Yeah,
we have a
that's
lot of
kinda-
ceasefires in our marriage, and if you don't have ceasefires in your marriage,
You won't last.
you won't last. Absolutely not. There's truces that have to be called. Constantly.
There's a famous Chinese writer, general philosopher. His name was Sun Tzu, and he wrote the book The Art of War.
Yep, I have that book.
And there's the art of marriage, which is kind of the same way. And,
Yeah.
and the key, according to Sun Tzu, is to know your enemy.
Yeah.
Not that she's my enemy.
Huh? It
Kinda-
came out.
No, kind of what it is the enemy
Out of
inside.
the abundance of the heart, the mouth
No,
speaketh.
it's the enemy in here that causes problems.
Indeed, yes.
And it's a matter of controlling this enemy
Yes.
inside.
Yeah, our feelings.
Yeah.
But let's go back to our theme of it. See, we're pastors, so we are struggling with keeping our interviews and our things short. But that's okay. I have the same problem even when I'm doing it by myself.
Yeah, she preaches longer than I do.
So no, that's not true. Oh my gosh, no, it is
That's
not
what your
true.
sister said.
We have 2 services, and I preach much shorter. Well, at least like 2 or 3 minutes shorter than you do.
Nobody believes that. Nobody.
I believe it.
Yeah. She, in her own mind, she believes it. She's a legend in her own mind.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in Panama. I was a Christian, a church leader, working for human rights, graduated from law school, had practiced for 4 years with somebody else signing for me, and 4 other years with him and the other attorney and I being associates. I meet John. If you want to know how we met and how we came to the conclusion that we were supposed to be together, then you have to look at the episode 1, which talks about our interracial internet romance. But right now we're gonna fast forward. We get married in Panama. We go through that near-death experience that John had.
No, you're going too far.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I grew up in a lily white Irish American family.
Yes.
In a lily white little town in Wisconsin.
Yes.
So when and my dad used to tell racist jokes when I was a kid.
Yeah.
He wasn't really malicious or mean. It was just kind of like the way he grew up.
Yeah.
And they just, it was like jokes like a priest, a reverend, and a rabbi go into a bar, and he would just tell jokes like that. It was, you wouldn't get away with it today, but back then you got away with it in the 60s and things like that. So that tells you
He's
how
really
old. When I was a little kid, I heard stories. But anyway, so this is the way my dad was. So when it came to the point where I was going to marry her, who doesn't look like me and doesn't look like anybody.
Don't I?
No.
Oh,
And
okay.
she doesn't look like anybody in my
That's
family.
a terrible realization. I had no idea.
So we agreed that if I couldn't get my parents' approval it probably wasn't God's will
Absolutely.
that we were going to get married. So I sat down Mom and Dad and I said, Mom, Dad, would it bother you or would it be a problem if whoever I married was not white? And they're like, well, they kind of, no, son, as long as you love her. And so I passed the test, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So I come to the United States, and we decided that I was going to come to the United States because I spoke fluent English.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke a little bit of Spanish, enough to be dangerous. But
Unfluent Spanish.
Yeah, unfluent, that's a very good way to put it. And so it made a lot more sense for me to move here and be with him and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Although he really likes Panama, right? You really like Panama.
Oh yeah, if you want to retire in a nice place, cheap, pretty country, and
people are very friendly.
nice food, and
Yeah.
you know, go to Panama. I've seen lots of articles on more and more Americans are relocating and retiring in northern Panama, where it's higher up elevation and it's cooler.
Yeah.
Where she's from is the furnace of Panama City, which I endured for many trips.
Yeah.
When we were.
But he ended up living in Florida. So,
yeah,
I mean,
go figure.
come on. But the point is, I completely, as I said in the first episode of this series, I completely overestimated my ability to deal with the change of living in a different country, in a different culture, leaving everything that I knew was mine, and coming to a completely different country and marrying a guy that I really didn't know. I mean, I knew him because we had been writing back and forth and we had been corresponding for 8 months and all that good stuff, but it's nothing like when you live in the same town with a person and you can be spending more like lifetime together. So it was a lot of transitions back, but probably the one that proved to be one of the most difficult ones to adjust was the transition from being a brown girl in a mostly white country on a temporary basis, because I had done trips to the United States as a brown girl, and wasn't a big deal. I mean, you always got looks, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But then I come back married to a guy that looks like him, and ladies and gentlemen, that
pretty scary.
Yeah, that was
Married to somebody that looks like you.
Yeah, exactly. He's scary in ways that one. I'm just teasing.
It was a mercy marriage.
I think he's gorgeous. Like, as in Beauty and the Beast, gorgeous. We
Beast?
live in the beauty and you.
Oh my God.
Just messing. Okay, so take it away.
After that,
No. Sorry.
it's been called a beast.
I'm just messing you.
We came back and immediately we noticed older white people were the most obvious people in restaurants, and they grew up in a generation where, especially then, it was not common, and even somewhat younger people today. The younger people accept these things, much better than they did 20 years ago, and in our case, one that I always talked about with her is people were actually more used to seeing a black man marry a white woman or be with a white woman. And I was the flip side, which wasn't as common.
I've never seen that difference. He sees it, I don't see it.
And a white man marrying a black woman, or someone who appears to be black until she
Exactly.
opens her mouth.
Exactly, and
then
the
they know
accent
she's
that
not,
comes out, the Hispanic accent comes out.
So, but anyway, we just got looks wherever we went.
Yeah.
It's just, as a white person, I guess I started to realize what non-white people feel like.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna say I feel like what they've experienced their whole life, but I got a little taste of it, so I know a little bit what they feel.
Yeah. Probably one of the most frustrating things to me was, and still is, although the level of frustration has been coming down because I've been exposed to this for 20 years, is going to a restaurant, at the beginning only with him, and now with our kids, and the four of us are standing there, and here comes the hostess or hoster. Is that how you say it? Host.
Yeah. Hostess, hoster.
Hoster. I was going to say hoster.
And you can't say waitress anymore, it's server. Right?
Exactly.
People are servers.
So whoever they come and they look at me and they go party of one, while I'm standing right there with my husband.
Separate checks.
And my kids. And then we eat together, the four of us as a family, we're joking, they're watching us, the whole time the waitress is watching us, and then she says,
server.
I'm sorry,
She's a
server.
server.
And then she or he go, although I must say that it happens a lot more with women than it happens with men. Separate checks. At the beginning, guys, I was so infuriated. I would literally have to get up, ask for the keys of the car, and get in the car, because I knew if I stayed, I was going to say something I was going to regret. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you had some difficult experiences in the first neighborhood that we lived, which is pretty humble neighborhood in Park Street, remember? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, we lived in an apartment building which was almost totally non-white. So, you know, get looks, and, you know, a lot of people probably would wonder, why are you living here? Why are you here? You know, but I mean, if you have faith in God, you have peace. I wasn't worried.
And the reason we were living there is because it's what we could afford, right?
Pretty much.
I mean, we're hard-working people, middle-class working people. That's what we could afford, being newlyweds, right?
Yeah, I mean, we now, after 20 years, live in it's not rich. It's a nicer house than we've ever lived in before. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's not large. Yeah. But it's the nicest place we've lived.
It has like an open space, a lot of light during the day, but it took us a while, and I will never forget, he had a very negative interaction with an African-American guy in the gas station, remember? And he got almost like on his face when he saw me in the car. You know, it was kind of like a, how dare you, right?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of that from both sides.
Yeah. From
white people and black people both. You know, it's not just a one-way street. It's, you know, people react from both sides. You know?
Yeah, and you know, like the black people look at him and say, "How dare you marry?"
Stole one of ours.
Exactly. And then people look at me like, "How dare you?" Particularly white women, "How dare you be with one of our guys? You know, why didn't you pick one of your own color?" It's just really, really problematic.
And one of the most disappointing, did I say that right? Disappointing things is Jenny was like in choirs or stuff in church, you know, and everybody loves Jenny. You know, you get to know her there. She's so bubbly and everything. And she'd like talk about me. "Oh, I'd love to meet your husband." And then she'd introduce me, and they like have a kind of a blank look on their face. And then that was kind of the end of the friendship for Jenny.
At church, guys.
This was at church.
So people would relate to him nicely and me nicely, because we're both very independent people, as long as we were separate. But once they see us coming together as a couple, that's where the friendship ended. Pretty sad, right?
No, I think when we tell people, "Oh, we've been married 20 years," they're like, "Oh, okay."
Then that's a little different.
It kind of softens things a little bit now, I think.
But it shouldn't have to be, right? I mean, it shouldn't have to be. And you know, Astrid Victoria, our daughter, our 16-year-old daughter, was telling us the other day that once in a while, she doesn't entertain the thought very much, but once in a while, she really thinks hard, and she thinks, man, if my mom and dad had been born 40 years ago or whatever, I probably wouldn't be here, because for him and her to be married in this country would have been illegal, right? And there were, and she's right? There's...
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite movies in the last year or two was a movie called The Free State of Jones. And it's kind of set in the Civil War, but it's also set, I believe, in the 1960s, where there's a descendant of the main character in the movie, who's a real person. I'm trying to think of his name. I can't think of his name right now. Matthew McConaughey played him. And he ended up in a relationship with a slave, or a former slave. But like, you go back like generations down the road, and still in the state of Mississippi in the 60s, it was illegal for people to be married who were of different races. And this guy was like 1/32nd or something like that, black or whatever it was. And he got married, and then they ended up in court. and he was being prosecuted for violating the race laws in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's very sad.
yeah, so it still went on back then.
And if you guys think that this is not happening in America, okay, we live in Florida. Our daughter, Esther Victoria, is 16 years old. When she was 7, we went through, we wanted to find a different school for her, and we went to this school, but we knew that this school, and we're not going to mention the name of the school because it's not our purpose to, what's the word I should use? Openly offend or...
No, because they did good things.
They did good things for us, but when we went, we were talking to them, we said, well, you know, we have some concerns because we know that you use the curriculum of Bob Jones University.
Right. Which, until recently, maybe within the last 10, 15 years, well, 15 years, they changed their policy about interracial dating.
Yeah, so...
Up until, you know, not super long ago,
Yeah, so...
they weren't allowed non-white, black and white to date
But what...
at school.
But what we thought...
Certainly not married.
What we thought was really funny, and we still joke about it until this day, is that we're like, we just want to make sure, you know, during this interview, that you guys have no problem, because we are obviously an interracial marriage, and we don't want our daughter to feel any type of discrimination or... And the person goes, oh, no. We've been perfectly fine with that for the last 5 years. And they were proud of it, right? Like for 5 years, we have been okay with people like you dating or being married.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the world we live in. You know, it's it's all about the heart.
At the end of the day.
You can pass all the anti-discrimination laws or anti-racism laws you want, but you can't change people's hearts. They have to decide to do that, and you know, it's I don't know. Part of it, as a Christian, it's the work of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
In your heart.
Yes.
You know, and even, you know, the long history of Christianity, especially in the South, they twisted certain passages in the Bible that separated the races and, you know, certainly justified slavery.
I even read...
You know, the Bible does talk about slavery, but it doesn't say it approves of slavery. It just describes the historical culture and events where the Bible was written.
Plus, it wasn't necessarily based on race. It was mostly based on debt, right? People would sell themselves into slavery because they owed, and they kind of paid with their labor.
Or prisoners of war.
Exactly. So it wasn't race. But you know, but at the end of the day, racism was eradicated as it was for most of the world
the writings of
through
the Apostle
Christian.
Paul.
Yeah.
You know, he said there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free. We're all one in Christ Jesus. And the tiny little book of Philemon. Philemon was a disciple of Paul, and he had this slave named Onesimus. And Onesimus ran away. And he ended up also with Paul, and he converted to the faith and became a disciple of Paul. And Paul sent Onesimus back to Philemon, and he said, I don't want him to come back to you as a servant, but as a brother.
Yes.
You know, and it's just the shortest book in the New Testament, but it was revolutionary.
For the time.
For the time.
Yeah.
So the Christianity was just these little verses and little examples just blew up whole mindsets in the world. That's how hugely important all those writings are of the Bible.
Yeah. I remember also reading Martin Luther King's biography, and it says that at the beginning, when he was very young in his career as a minister, he fell in love with a white woman. And he had to sacrifice what he wanted to do with his heart, how he felt about this woman, because he knew it wouldn't be accepted in his congregation. He ends up marrying, you know, eventually a black woman, but it's recorded in his original years. So it's just really, really sad what racism and prejudice has done. And there's really no biblical foundation for it. I think the people that use the Bible use isolated verses, use the verses out of context. But at the end of the day, I think it's a matter of the heart.
Yeah, it's true. There's one particular verse in the book of Genesis where after the flood, Noah got drunk. And if you think about, a lot of people judge Noah, but if you think about the trauma of what Noah just saw,
50 plus days on a boat.
Well, you just saw the entire human race
being destroyed,
wiped out.
Yeah.
And anybody would be traumatized by watching that. Even, a Christian, a godly person, they could just totally break down.
Okay, what did just
at
happen?
some point. So he drank at least once to cope with it, and he was kind of disrobed and naked, and one of the sons, I believe it was Ham, saw, and he came back and told his brothers, "Hey, Dad's naked. You want to go see?" And the other two brothers were like, "You gotta be kidding! You're joking about our dad like that?" And they got over to where Dad was, and they grabbed a blanket, and they didn't even look at him, and they backed up and covered their dad with the blanket. And Noah woke up and he heard about this, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan." And Canaan was the son of Ham. And people that study the different sons of Noah have said that the sons of Ham, eventually the black races, they were descended from Ham. So people have taken that and said, "Oh, all the blacks were cursed by God." No, it's just something Noah did.
Exactly.
Okay, it had nothing to do with God. It was something Noah did. And then the other book in the Bible is Ezra, I believe. I think it's Ezra and Nehemiah, where even after the Israelites came back from 7 years of captivity, they, against God's wishes, they started intermarrying with anybody they wanted to that was living in the nation of Israel.
But it had nothing to do with race. They had
other religions,
other
people that were adherents of other religions.
And we need to clarify that these religions were sacrificing their children, putting them through the fire. They were getting into pagan orgies. So God had a very, very specific reason why he was trying to preserve his people from that kind of corruption, right?
So, that's kind of the places in the Bible that were twisted concerning race.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's very sad,
So, reeling this in,
Yeah.
otherwise we're going to go into 40 minutes, which we don't want to do that.
Right.
What is it like to be married to someone that is so different than you are in so many ways?
It's always interesting.
How so?
I never know what's coming next. It's been kind of cool going to another country to see your family and stuff like that. And, I've always enjoyed people from different countries. When I was in college, it seemed like every semester or something, I'd have a different roommate from a different country. God just did that. I had people from China, Korea, I had a good friend from Tunisia, and just all over the place. One of my best friends was from Malaysia.
Okay, thank you.
Shashi. Hey, Shashi,
Thank you for talking to us about the whole United Nations. But my question was very specific. What is it like to be married to me as a diverse person?
Well, it's been a learning experience because, different cultures express themselves different ways, and people say certain sentences and words that can be misinterpreted one way or the other. And one of the biggest things that she had a problem with me is if she'd ask me, "Do you want this? Do you want that?" And I'd just say, "I don't care." And she took that like, "Oh, he doesn't care about me.
I was literal.
He doesn't care about anything I do."
Yeah.
And here in America, it's just like, I'm open. Whatever happens, happens. You can do this, you can do that. But she took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And
it was culture, it was language, just a variety of things, right?
And,
but I don't think that had anything to do with my color, right?
No,
more cultural.
Yeah, and I was told by some international students when I was in college, Americans would always say, "Hi, how you doing?" And they were ready to actually explain how they're doing. Americans don't mean they want to sit there and hear you tell them, "How are you really doing?" It's just
it's a phrase.
It's what you'd call a pleasantry, a formality. Just be nice.
Just as when they say that it's raining cats and dogs, it doesn't mean literally
and
there's
it would
cats
hurt.
and dogs raining.
It would hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, you learn the hard way.
Yeah.
About other cultures, maybe through making mistakes.
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And I think at the beginning of our marriage, like when I was in my country, I felt like very secure, very assertive of who I was. But once I came to the United States on a permanent basis and I started experiencing racism, particularly as it related to being married to a man like that, I started feeling insecure. I remember the first boss I ever had, I literally warned him, I'm like, my skin is brown. Like I told him in advance, Tom, who doesn't have a bone of racism in his body, but I started getting scared and I started thinking that I almost needed to offer that in advance to prepare people because I started feeling very insecure in who I was and how I looked. And also at the beginning of our marriage, I started feeling very insecure as it related to white women or women that were lighter skinned because this constant mistreatment and just this like being expressed by people that didn't approve of us as a couple just created a lot of insecurity in me. That was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard.
So those are the issues we've had to deal with. And
yeah. How have we made it for 20 plus years dealing with this?
The grace of God, prayer. You know, people that did accept us, so we knew not everybody was like that.
Yeah.
So you know, it's a combination of factors.
Yeah, we have friends from all walks of life, but I would say we have a lot of friends that are different than we are. We've had friends from Hispanic countries, Black countries, Africa. We've had white friends too, but we found our refuge in people that are different than us. There's just great value in people that are different. And one day, you want to quote that beautiful verse in Revelations?
There'll be no more death or mourning
And
or
people
crying
of
or
every
pain.
nation.
Oh yeah. I saw before the throne people from every tribe and people and nation and tongue before the throne and before the Lamb.
So at the end,
that's the way it's going to be.
At the end, all of us, all the nations, all the cultures. So if you have you have prejudice with people of different colors and cultures,
you're not going to like heaven.
You are not going to like heaven.
No.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Jesus is not white. We just thought we would say that, right?
He was a Middle Eastern Jewish.
Yeah.
Man. You know, so he didn't look like me.
No. He didn't look like me either, probably somewhere in the middle. But the bottom line is we've stayed together. We've had to hold on to one another. I think that one of the things that makes a marriage strong is when you as a couple go through difficult times together. And I think being constantly exposed to prejudice as a interracial couple has forced us to hold on to one another. Right? To say at some points, you know, it's us against the world, and to really, you know, to a degree, kind of having an attitude like, let's show them. Let's show them that we can do this, that we can stay together, that we, under God's blessing and by His grace, we can stay together. So in a way, it's been kind of like a motivation, right?
Has this been 40 minutes?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But I've been trying to keep it really short. No, we're going to call JC, who is getting ready to stop this video. But this is episode 2 of our getting together. And next time we get together, we are going to talk about fighting in marriage. So until then, stay with us, subscribe, like, leave us your comments, your questions, and very, very important, follow us so you learn how to make sure your marriage is not over, right? This is why the series is called Marriage Over. You want to say something? Parting thoughts?
No, we are here in the same house.
Yes.
Have our 2 kids.
Yes.
So we're not faking anything.
No.
You know.
This was completely unrehearsed.
She didn't drive here from Tampa, and I didn't drive here from Orlando just to show up and look like, oh wow, you know, married couple.
Yeah.
And tonight, as soon as this is over, we're leaving. She's going back home. I'm going back home. So.
No, we live here, right here. Been together for over 20 years. This was completely unrehearsed. We want to make this as spontaneous as possible, and we want to make sure that we help other couples because we ourselves have received a lot of help through our 20 plus years
And
of
we need a
marriage.
lot of help.
And we continue to need a lot of help. And so we love you guys. Subscribe, share, comment. We're counting on seeing you until next time. Marriage over.